Picture this, the deafening roar of a vintage airplane engine, suddenly swallowed by the deep, ominous rumble of rolling thunder. Today, we're not just reading a story. We are stepping right inside a dark, violently shaking cockpit to solve a literal life-or-death puzzle.
Seriously, ask yourself, what would you do if you are flying totally alone at night, your fuel is running dangerously low, a violent storm suddenly surrounds you, and out of nowhere a mysterious black aeroplane appears right beside your window? Welcome to today's Explainer. Go ahead and put on your detective hats, because we are about to piece together one of the greatest mysteries in the Class 10 English textbook, Frederick Forsyth's The Black Aeroplane. So our story actually begins in absolute tranquility. The author writes, "The moon was coming up in the east. Behind me, I was dreaming of my holiday and looking forward to being with my family. I looked at my watch, 1:30 in the morning. Literally, our narrator is just a pilot flying his old Dakota airplane alone over France, heading back home to England. The sky is perfectly clear, the countryside is sleeping beneath him, and he's just at peace. 1:30 in the morning. I really want you to feel that sensory atmosphere. The sky is totally empty, it's pitch dark outside the cockpit, and it is dead quiet. In this deep, isolated space, his only motivation is a super relatable, human one. He just really wants to get home to his family. He checks in with Paris Control, makes a slight turn, and then we get this crucial detail. I checked the map and the compass, switched over to my second and last fuel tank. I'll be in time for breakfast, I thought. A good, big English breakfast. Now pause right there. Notice the massive red flag? He is on his second and absolutely last fuel tank. But his mind isn't on fuel management. His fatal flaw is already showing. He has this intense, almost blinding longing for comfort, for home, and for that breakfast.
Which brings us to a huge psychological question. Is the promise of a warm meal enough to completely cloud a trained pilot's judgment? Think about it. Have you ever wanted something so badly, like just crashing in your own bed after a long trip, that you started to kind of ignore the creeping warning signs right in front of you?
Well, the illusion of safety shatters fast. Paris was about 150 kilometers behind me when I saw the clouds, storm clouds. They were huge. They looked like black mountains standing in front of me across the sky. The imagery here is absolutely chilling. Black mountains. He knows for a fact he can't fly up and over them, and because he's on that last tank, he simply doesn't have the fuel to fly around them to the north or south. He's trapped.
Okay, put yourself in the pilot's seat right now. You have limited fuel. You have a massive, impassable storm staring you down, and Paris is a full 150 kilometers behind you. What would you do? Would you turn back to safety, or would you push through?
What's totally fascinating here is how the pilot's emotional desire just completely bulldozes his logical training. I ought to go back to Paris, he thinks. See, that is the rational pilot talking. But then he says, but I wanted to get home. I wanted that breakfast. I'll take the risk, I thought, and flew that old Dakota straight into the storm. This is a classic, terrifying example of decision-making under extreme pressure. Spoiler alert, emotion wins. And the consequence is immediate. Inside the clouds, everything was suddenly black. It was impossible to see anything outside the airplane. The old airplane jumped and twisted in the air. I looked at the compass. I couldn't believe my eyes. The compass was turning round and round and round. It was dead. The radio fails right after. He's screaming into the mic to Paris Control, but there's nothing. No compass, no radio. Just the storm swallowing him whole.
It's pure panic. He's surrounded by swirling black clouds, basically waiting for the plane to go down. But then, practically out of thin air, another plane appears right outside his window. Then, in the black clouds quite near me, I saw another aeroplane. It had no lights on its wings, but I could see it flying next to me through the storm. I could see the pilot's face, turned towards me. He lifted one hand and waved. "Follow me," he was saying. "Follow me." Obviously, our pilot feels overwhelming relief. He follows the stranger like an obedient child. But wait, did you catch that eerie detail? The plane has 0 lights on its wings. Who flies into a storm with no lights?
Ask yourself, in the dead of night, inside a violent, deadly storm, can you really trust a mysterious pilot flying a blacked-out plane? Is this guy a savior sent to guide him, or is it some kind of illusion dragging him further into disaster?
Well, he follows the stranger for half an hour, absolutely terrified his fuel is going to run dry. Then, boom, the climax hits. Suddenly, I came out of the clouds and saw 2 long, straight lines of lights in front of me. It was a runway, an airport. I was safe. I turned to look for my friend in the black airplane, but the sky was empty. There was nothing there. The savior has literally vanished as quickly as he appeared.
no trace. He lands safely, shaking, and rushes to the control tower to find this guy and thank him. He asked the woman at the desk where the other plane went. She looked at me very strangely and then laughed. Another aeroplane? Up there in this storm? No other aeroplanes were flying tonight. Yours was the only one I could see on the radar. Let that sink in. The chilling confirmation. He was entirely alone the whole time.
So the mystery is officially wide open. Let's debrief like real investigators. What are our working theories? Was it a guardian angel? You know, a literal, supernatural entity showing up exactly when needed to save his life. Or was it a hallucination, a psychological projection triggered by extreme stress, fear, and low oxygen? Or is it simply an unanswered mystery, a deliberate literary choice by author Frederick Forsyth to just keep us guessing forever?
Let's lean into that psychological angle for a second. When the human mind is caught in the paralyzing grip of absolute terror, when your instruments are dead and you're sure you're going to crash, the subconscious goes into overdrive. It might literally manufacture a symbol of hope. The pilot desperately needed a guide to find the courage to keep flying. So, his mind just created one. In a way, he saved himself.
All right, let's pivot into our board exam masterclass. If evaluators ask you about the theme or central idea of this chapter, here are your golden points. It is all about unwavering courage in the face of uncertainty. It's about the intense psychological power of hope during a crisis. It teaches us about trusting our own instincts when all external tools fail us. And crucially, it explores that fascinating gray area between the supernatural and the sheer survival instinct of the human mind.
Let's quickly break down our key players. Our pilot, he's experienced, sure, but deeply vulnerable to nostalgia. That makes him reckless, taking that crazy risk, but ultimately courageous. Then we have the air traffic controller. She is our anchor. Grounded in reality, practical, and her laugh highlights the absolute logical impossibility of what the pilot claims happened. And the mystery pilot? A totally silent commanding blank slate representing pure guidance.
Moving on to language, there's a brilliant vocabulary exercise in the textbook on the word black that you absolutely need to know. The context shift. Black mountains refers to the physical, literal darkest color of those storm clouds. But when he says, inside the clouds everything was suddenly black, it means entirely without light. Grasping these subtle shifts is super important for your language comprehension questions.
We see the same thing with the word fly. It doesn't just mean a plane moving through the air. You can fly a flag, meaning you display it. You can fly into a rage, which is just suddenly snapping and getting angry. You can fly high, meaning you're super successful, or fly the coop to escape. Keep these idioms in your back pocket to secure those extra vocabulary marks on exam day.
Okay, rapid-fire revision time for the top expected exam questions. You need to know exactly why the pilot took the risk. Yep, the English breakfast. You need to vividly describe the sheer terror inside those storm clouds. The dead compass, the dead radio. You absolutely must explain why the woman in the control tower laughed, because her radar was completely empty. And for competency questions, be ready to justify whether the plane was real or a figment of his imagination, using textual evidence.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to really chew on. Sometimes, not every mystery is meant to be neatly solved. Frederick Forsyth is brilliantly reminding us that when we are entirely lost in the terrifying storms of life, hope often appears exactly when we need it the most, whether it comes from the outside or from deep within our own minds. So, maybe the real question isn't who was actually flying the mysterious black aeroplane. The real question you should be pondering is this: would our pilot have found the strength to survive without believing that someone, somewhere, was there to guide him through the dark? Think about that as you study detectives. Keep questioning the text, keep analyzing the clues, and I'll see you in the next explainer.